Hi everyone, welcome to Placement Grid. In this video, we'll talk about Bain & Company consulting interview. But it will also be helpful for other similar firms such as McKinsey, BCG, AT Kearney, etc. We'll cover the whole procedure, starting from resume shortlisting and the various spike factors a company looks for. We'll then talk about a non-elimination case study workshop, and eventually we'll jump onto the guesstimate section. After that, we'll cover the most important part of the consulting interviews, that is a case study round. We'll also talk about some very useful tips which will be handy for your preparation. If you have any question, please leave your comments in the comment section. And for more such videos, do subscribe to Placement Grid. Cheers.
So hi everyone, this is Mayank. Today I'll be sharing with you my experience for sitting in an interview with Bain. So there are multiple rounds for a Bain interview. The first round is a resume shortlisting round. So resume shortlist for any consulting firm looks at certain spikes in your resume. So for example, one of these spikes could be your CGPA. If you have a very high CGPA, for example 9.6 or 9.7 on a grade point scale of 10, then that is considered to be a spike. Another spike could be if you've done excellent academically in terms of your projects or in terms of any conference paper that you've published. So for example, if you've published some very seminal paper which has been cited multiple times, then that is also considered to be a spike. And the third spike could be your internships. For example, if you intern for some venture capital firm or some company like Amazon or something, then that is also considered to be a very good spike. Fourth spike could be your sports, involvement in sports and co-curricular activities. So for example, if you've been the captain of a sport team, or if you've been the sports secretary from your batch, then that is also considered to be a spike. One more spike could be if you've worked for social causes. For example, one of my friends who also got shortlisted in the resume shortlisting round was the president of the Nirman Project, which is actually an NGO that works from different campuses. So these are certain buckets. If you tick enough of these buckets, then you're sure to be shortlisted for a consulting interview. Post the resume shortlisting and before the first round of interview, we had a case study workshop wherein the panelists from Bain took us through some examples of case studies and guesstimates which we were made to solve into groups. The way this happened was certain people were shortlisted post the resume shortlisting round, and we were divided into groups of 5, and then they gave us one guesstimate which was basically a profit and loss estimating the profits of a restaurant, and then they asked us to solve it. During this practice session, the panelists also guided us what could we do, we could ask them questions about how to go about it, and they also kept asking us questions as to what were we thinking and what was going on in our minds. Post the guesstimate practice session, case study practice session, where we were given a statement from side of business side of view. For example, there was a certain company which was seeing depreciation in its profits, so they wanted to know what was the reason for this depreciation, and again they made us solve this into groups, and they wanted us to figure out how would we go about it and what could be done into groups, and then they actually guided us through this process so that we would be more comfortable the next day in the interview rounds. And post this case study practice session, we had a non-eliminative test wherein they gave us a booklet which had lots of data about a particular company. So this session was not supposed to be eliminative in nature, as in it wasn't a competition. What they really wanted to see was whether we could analyze data in a logical way and infer from it. So there were certain graphs and certain questions. For example, there was a graph which showed the company's profits through the months for different years, and then there was a paragraph which told us about the investments that the company had done in previous years. Now, what they wanted us to infer was what was the reason that the profits of the company were depreciating in this particular year. Then we had a few options which we had to select from, and so there were some other questions similar to this. I think there were 9 questions similar to this, inference based, and then there was a last question which expected us to make a report about everything that we've inferred so far in 5 or 6 points. Here, what they wanted to see was how concise we can be in our analysis and how crisply can we show them what we've gathered from the data that they've given us. And also, I think one other reason why this round made sense was so that they could understand understand more about our strengths and weaknesses, so that they could interact with us more in the interview, basis our strengths and weaknesses personally. So the third round was primarily a guesstimate round. So there was one interviewer which took this round, and so when I entered the interview room, the first question that like almost any interviewer will ask you is about taking them through your resume. Now, the one thing that I think everyone should keep in mind is that you should really know everything that is written on your resume. Do not keep anything vague there, because for any consulting interview you should at least know what you've written in your resume very, very well, because it's possible that there's one thing that you've written and you think that the interviewer won't see that, but then if somehow the interviewer questions you about that particular point and you're not able to answer well, then that really makes a very bad first impression. Then we've already lost the selection process before the guesstimate has even started. So I made sure that I knew everything that was written on my resume. So the first thing that the interviewer did was like ask me about myself, and like he tried to make me comfortable, as in asking like how was my day, and then he asked me like, can you run me through your resume very quickly? And then I took him through all the different sections that my resume had. So primarily any resume would have like certain sections like your academic projects and maybe your internships, and then your positions of responsibilities. So I think I tried to focus more on my positions of responsibilities because it was a consulting interview, but you could like diversify it more, and it really depends from person to person. He also asked me like why I wanted to work for Bain particularly, and then the answer to this question really depends from person to person. So you can come up with your own answers, but make sure that there's some basic questions that you should really know the answers to. You should be very well prepared for answering these particular basic questions before entering into any particular interview. So once like he felt that I had gotten pretty comfortable and I was not really nervous at that now, then he proceeded to give me a guesstimate. So this guesstimate, from what I can recall, my guesstimate was based on a profit and loss question. So there are really buckets into any. If you've solved enough guesstimates, you know that there are certain buckets in which guesstimates fall. One could be like estimating the revenue. One could be like estimating the sales in a particular day. And these are really different ways of putting the same question about estimating the profits. My question was estimating the profit of a 5-star restaurant on a particular day. Now there are multiple ways that you can solve any guesstimate. So there's no right or wrong way in solving any particular problem here. What the interviewer really wants to see is what is your approach to solving the question. So for example, like he'll keep asking you questions about why you have taken certain assumptions. Now again, there are two types of interviewers here. From my experience, one will be wherein the interviewer has given you a question and then just like he wants you to solve it and take you through the answer at the very end. And the second type is wherein he wants you to explain every assumption as in when you take it. So I made sure to like ask this upfront, as in what he wanted me to do, like not like what he wanted me to do. And I made any assumption, I made sure that I told him that this is an assumption that I'm taking, and is it a fair assumption to take? If he probably had some questions about that assumption, he would ask me there and then, so that I do not go and solve the entire question only to find out later that I've done it the wrong way and then made a very bad impression on the interviewer. So I proceeded to solve this particular guesstimate about estimating the profits of a 5-star restaurant. For any profit question, there are two sides to it: the cost and the revenue. Once you've solved these two buckets, you can easily estimate the profit. Even now, I started to break down the cost bucket. Now, for any cost bucket, there are two buckets in cost. One is fixed and one is variable. So when you're making these particular buckets to drill down further into any particular category, it's very important to ensure that your approach is very focused. For example, there should be no overlapping between the buckets. There's this approach called Macy approach, which is like mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive, which essentially means that the buckets or the categories that you're making are mutually exclusive, as in they do not overlap, but collectively exhaustive, which means that they cover everything when they are put together. So when you follow this kind of approach, it'll be very easy to solve any particular question. And also make sure that you have identified the main objective that you have to solve. Do not keep it very vague. It should not be like I will first solve for the cost, then I'll solve for the revenue. It should be very clear that you want the profit, and anything that you feel that is irrelevant or maybe it's not really necessary, ensure that you make sure that you ask the interviewer that should you consider this or not. Most of the times what will happen is that the interviewer will tell you that it's not really that important, you can leave it. So that really eases up the process of solving the question. Now for cost, it would fixed cost would probably be for a restaurant the furniture that is bought, the land cost that he has, and variable costs would probably include the materials that he is buying, the and maybe the labor cost that he has. Now once you're done with, you'll probably end up with certain figure for cost, right? Now then you shift to the revenue bucket. For revenue, there'll be certain aspects. The revenue the revenue for a restaurant is probably more confusing or more difficult, because you'll have to probably divide the day, because the revenue really depends on the footfall and how many customers can the restaurant really serve. So you'll have to take certain assumptions about the seating capacity of the restaurant first of all. Now, for example, we cannot really generalize about how many customers can any five-star restaurant serve, but you can probably take an assumption from your experience. It's really important that you take assumptions that are reasonable, that you have like genuine reasons for. So, for example, personal experience is actually a very good reason to take assumptions in guesstimates and case studies. So, if you say like, from experience, I've seen that most generally five-star restaurants have a capacity of 50 to 60 people. And that's a very fair assumption to take, and probably the interviewer will tell you to go forward with your assumption. Unless if he wants to check something else, then he might make it more dynamic, but that really again depends on interviewer to interviewer. So once he's given you once he's told you that you can go forward and take this assumption, it's a fair assumption to take, then you now you go forward and start solving it. So the next step that I personally took was dividing the day into peak hours and non-peak hours. So for example, a restaurant has more customers during night. A five-star restaurant would probably have more customers during the night than in the day. So then I divided the day into 6 peak hours and 6 non-peak hours. And again, the peak days and non-peak days. So for example, restaurant will probably have more customers on a weekend than on weekdays. Again, I asked this question to the interviewer whether he wanted me to take this assumption. My interviewer said that you can consider all days as equal to ease up the process of calculating, because by this time he had understood that the approach that I was taking was fairly logical, and I would probably end up with a good answer from any approach that I take. So just to ease up the process and just to see whether I can like take these assumptions to a final answer, he eased up the process and he said that you can consider all days to be equal. And then I proceeded with the calculations that I take. Now you have to again make very sure that your mathematical calculations are very accurate here, because consulting and analytics still comes down to inferring and calculating with the data very precisely. So I took a footfall of about if you're taking, let's say, a seating capacity of 50 people and a footfall of about 1 or 2 people per hour or something like that, or maybe, and then you assume the expense of a particular customer. So for example, you assume that a particular customer would probably spend 1,000 rupees or 1,500 rupees in a 5-star hotel. These assumptions are really based on experience. So for example, I personally the way I personally calculated the expense was I divided the menu into 3 categories, that was starters and a main course and a dessert. And then I calculated the average cost price of any 5-star restaurant for each of these categories. Again, this is based on personal experience. And then I came out with a particular figure that it will probably be 3,000 for 2 people in a 5-star restaurant that I am currently considering. And then I asked him, is this a fair assumption to take? And he said that, yeah, I think that is a logical assumption. You can go forward with it. And I took all these assumptions. It's very important that you note these assumptions down, because you don't want that in the end you come up with a wrong figure after going through these many steps. Once you've got all the data points that you think you need, so if you're calculating the profit, then you can divide it into a time frame. If you're calculating the profit for a month or a day or an hour, so now if you're calculating it for an hour, it becomes easier. If you want to calculate it for a month, you'll probably just multiply it by 30, since the interviewer has said that consider all days to be equal. So once I had all these data points about the footfall and the expense of a particular customer and the seating capacity, and I just multiplied them and gave him a figure about the revenue. And then you had already calculated the cost, and then you just subtract them and get a profit estimate. now that you have an estimate, the interviewer will check that. The interviewer doesn't really care about whether the answer is correct or not. He does care about whether you've done the calculations right or not. That means whether you have multiplied and added and subtracted correctly or not. Now, one more thing that I've seen in certain interviews is that they might ask you to solve the same question using a different approach. That is called a sanity check. The reason for a sanity check is what they want to see is that your approach, that you can also solve this from a different perspective, that you have multiple perspectives for the same question, and so that you can also and so that you can make sure yourself that your answer is not really very vague, or it doesn't really differ a lot from your second approach. And this is actually a very good practice if you solve any practice questions also. It also helps do a sanity check so that you get enough practice about solving the same question with different perspectives. And this is once he saw the answer. My interviewer didn't really ask for a sanity check, so I didn't do that. Post this guesstimate, he was quite satisfied with the answer that I gave in and my approach. Post this guesstimate, he proceeded to ask me certain other questions like more on my resume, like what have you been doing, what else do you do in your pastime, and these sort of basic questions. And then one other question that like probably will come up in every interview is that if you have any further questions. So the interview will ask you if you have any questions about the company or anything of the kind. So one good thing to do here is try not to be very vague. Like, do not just ask questions to make an impression. It's better to be genuine, as in try to show an interest in the environment of working, in the learning curve that the company offers. So I asked him about like what role will I be serving in, and what will be the learning curve, and how much can I learn there, and what are the technical skills that I can acquire there. These are some questions that I was actually interested in knowing to decide whether or not I really wanted to work there or not. One other thing that you can really ask the interviewer is about your own feedback as to how you fared in the interview process. Like, was your approach good? Was there any other approach? So for example, in my case, somewhere in the middle of solving this guesstimate and estimating the expense of one particular customer, I didn't make a mistake, but the approach that I took was a bit lengthier. For example, I started to average out the cost for different categories. So like my interviewer said that you could probably have done this in a better way by like just assuming that probably when you go in a 5-star restaurant, it's 3,000 for 2 people, or probably we have apps like Zomato and Uber Eats which list down the amount of money that it will take, the bill amount for it, average bill amount for 2 people or 1 people. You could have assumed that easily, and so it would have like saved you 5-10 minutes of your time. So that was actually a very good feedback. I could actually use this for solving other case studies also. Yeah, and also by asking feedback, there's this one thing: when you ask for your own feedback, it leaves a positive impression on the interviewer, as in he sees that you're actually concerned about your performance, and that you're not really just trying to make an impression. And also the interviewer starts thinking about positive points that you've had in the interview process, so that actually has a positive impact. So the fourth and the final round for Bain interview was a case study round. Case studies are really more intensive, more data intensive as compared to guesstimates. So again, there was one interviewer in the panel, and he was from manager level. He was a manager level interviewer, and when I entered the interview chamber, the first question he asked me was again to take him through like my resume and how was I faring, and how was the previous interview. These are some basic questions that he asked first, so that I would again be comfortable. So the question was this: as in, there was a luxury eyewear company which wanted to expand operations, and the company had like shortlisted three countries where they wanted to expand operations into, and they had come to Bain, and they wanted Bain to advise them on to which country to expand into first. So if you look at it like very objectively, it comes down to estimating which country will give you maximum profits. So the first thing that you do when you are faced with any question is you take some time to organize your thoughts into a particular framework. So you can probably ask for 2 minutes. Like I said, can I take 2 minutes to just collect my thoughts together, and then just start writing down questions, as in what are the questions that you'll probably need answers to, so that you can solve this question. Since it's a market entry question, you'll probably need to know about the competitors again. So the questions are important, but what's also important is the order in which you ask the questions. It should not be that that right off the bat you come out and ask who are the competitors. That's not going to work, because the interviewer is probably going to tell you like, you haven't asked me about the product, you don't know about the price points, you don't know about the supply side. How can what's the point in finding out competitors now? It should really be very logical, as in how you're proceeding. It should not really be very haywire. Since the objective is to find out which country has a maximum profit, and there are two buckets, like supply and demand. So you'll have to figure out what the supply costs would be in every country. You'll have to figure out what the demand would be in every country. And let's say, since it's a new market question, again, there's one other thing that you have to keep in mind, is that it's possible that not every country gives you profits right off the bat. So the next question would be, the question that you could probably ask your interviewer is like, how much time does the company is looking at to go into profitability? So that is one other question that I had. Once you write down all these questions, then you proceed with asking them to the interviewer. Now don't do this, that some people do is they ask all the questions in one go, and then they just collect, see what they've written down, and then just start solving it at the end. That's not really advisable in my view. What you can do is ask one question and then see if you can proceed if you can take one or two steps using the data that you've got from that one particular question. So for example, if you've asked what are our product lines, then you can probably when you've got some particular answer, you can bucket those product lines into different categories. Now you can probably go and ask is the CEO of the company open to opening new plants in the countries which he wants to expand into? Now again, the answer really depends on the interviewer. He can say yes, he can say no. In my case, he said that the CEO does not want to open a new plant, so the only thing that is possible is exporting what we've made in-house, right? So once I had this supply and demand categories, I started to break down the supply side into different categories. Supply is all about cost, right? So again, you can divide it into fixed and variable costs. Now, since fixed costs, they're not going to be any plant costs, because the company has already said that they don't want to open up a new plant. So the next question that I asked was, are we selling everything that we are making already? Because if you're already selling everything that we are making, we'll have to acquire more machines. We'll have to produce more. If you're not selling everything that we are making, we can use some of that we can export some of that to sell in the new market. So that is one way to go about it. Now, so these questions, the case studies generally are more complicated, as in they have more things to look at. So one thing that you can do to make it a bit easier is to look at it from your own perspective. For example, what would you do if you were the CEO of a company? So whenever I wasn't sure of any assumptions, if they were right or not, of course you cannot be sure because you haven't been in that position. But what you can do is frame it in such a way I want to make sure that I'm thinking if I were the CEO, I would probably do this. And this really actually helps you put a positive impact on the interviewer, because you're personalizing your question and you're seeing it from the perspective of your client, and that is all consulting is about. The end goal is to satisfy your clients, and if you are actually empathizing with your clients, will actually have a very good positive impact on the interviewer. So all my questions were framed like this. I'm thinking if I were the CEO, or maybe I were running a plant, I would probably do this, I would probably do this. And if the assumption somehow clashed with my approach, then the interviewer would correct me, I don't think that would matter much. I don't think that would matter much. So again, the target of the interviewer here is not to see whether your answer is right or not. He wants to see your approach, how you're solving it. There'll also be some categories which are not really important and which will probably complicate things up. So you can go ahead and ask them should I consider this, or maybe I'll just assume it that it's the same. For example, if you have multiple product lines, if you have a product for women, if you have a product for men, if you have a product for children, you have different age groups, then I went forward and asked should I consider different age groups, buying attitudes of different genders, or questions of the sort. And then he told me that you can assume it to be the same. I just want to see your approach. And then And then that really eased up the process again for solving the question. Now, there were also some data points involved here. So in a guesstimate, the data points you have to assume, but in a case study, the data points will be given to you. So for example, I could not assume the price points or selling points of the glassware here in a case study. I asked the interviewer what were the price points, and then he told me that what were the prices at which they were selling it in their current operational country. So now at this particular point, when you are setting up the price points in a new country, so there's no data for setting up price points in a new market. So what you have to ask is who are your competitors, because you'll probably keep your prices somewhere around your competitors. But again, so the next, so you could ask like, is there any present competitor? So he'll probably give you one or two competitors, and he'll also tell you like how they are faring in the market. He'll probably say that there's competitor A with 40% market size, who has like 40% market stake. There's competitor B who has 20% market stake, and there's some other competitors who has a certain percentage of the market. And then he'll probably go on to tell you like the competitor A had these product lines and he's serving these customer areas with these price points. So now the thing to see here in my particular question was that the company was a luxury eyewear company. Probably for any company, the next question you would logically ask is, are the customers price sensitive? Because if the customers are price sensitive, that would mean that increasing your prices by too much will hamper your demand. But since it's a luxury wear, the customers are generally not that price sensitive about luxury. So for example, if you're keeping it maybe let's say 10 or 20% higher, probably it won't hamper demand as much as it would for a non-luxury product. So that was a major point to see here. So when I said, so I ended up asking the question actually, like, are the customers price sensitive? So he cross-questioned me on the same thing, like, do you think it will really matter? Then I had to rethink as to if does it really matter or does it not? Because sometimes interviewers will ask you questions to see your confidence also, and to see whether you are confident about the questions that you are asking yourself. It turns out that here I told him that I think customers will not be as much price sensitive since it's a luxury eyewear. And then he said that, yeah, I think you're right. They won't be as much price sensitive. So you can go forward and just assume some price points that you are selling at maybe currently in your country. Again, now once you're done with the supply side, you'll have to cater to the demand side. Demand side for a new market size question is a new market entry question is relatively more difficult because you do not have any data. You will have to ask the interviewer, as in not probably, that what are the buying habits of customers here. So he asked me about my point of view, like what do you think will be the buying habits. I could not really come up with a satisfactory answer here. I told him clearly, it's better to be very clear about what you're thinking at this particular point instead of getting nervous and ending up like and then just getting lost in the question. It's better to be just ask questions upfront. Then more questions you ask, the more clarity you'll get for the question that you're solving. And it's really about connecting with your interviewer, being on the same page. I asked him whether that since it's a new market entry question, I don't think we have any data for, and it's a new country, so we really have to probably do a survey about what are the buying habits so that we can put our price points so that we get to profitability in the time frame that the company wants us to get to. Like for example, he told me that the CEO wants to get into like 10% profitability by the end of the first year. So that was one thing another thing that I had to keep in mind while deciding the price points again. The price points you cannot decide before you know the demand. So again, so by this time actually it had like already been 30 to 35 minutes and we were really short on time. So the interviewer told me that to like take him through my approach that I am going to take further down the line. So I told him that our points of like our competitive edge is probably that we are a foreign brand, so we'll have to create a brand value by advertising, and quality is not really going to be an issue here because it's a luxury eyewear, so quality won't really matter that much because that at least that was my take, and he seemed pretty satisfied with that particular take. So I told him that we'll have to advertise, we'll have to create a brand value because that will be the competitive edge. against the present competitors. Again, to ease up the process, he told me that consider just one category, consider just women, consider middle-aged women and their buying habits, and then don't consider different age groups either. So I just went on and I said that again we'll have to do a survey, and I came up with some number which I cannot really recall right now, but I'll come across with some assumption. It's not really even based on experience. It's going to be very vague here, but you can just cross verify it. Like, is this a fair assumption to take? If he wants you to take certain point, then he'll just give you some data points and you can choose that, and then you can calculate the final demand that you're going to have. And then in the end, once you have certain numbers, you can go and calculate your final answer. It's very important to be mathematically correct. You don't want to end up doing some mathematical mistake even in the case study, but the interviewer can ask you for a sanity check. So again, you'll have to think from it from a different point of view. Now, one more thing that generally happens in a case study is the interviewer can probably make it very dynamic. So for example, in my case study, when I went across and solved for one particular country, I also had the approach would probably be the same for both the other countries also that the company had shortlisted. So the interviewer was not interested in that. What he would probably do is he'll tell me that suppose that country B has now something like it has certainly country B has seen an increase in demand. So what will you do now? How will you calculate the revenue in that particular market? So again, you have to go and solve for country B also. So he can really make it very dynamic also. He can make it very static also. It really depends on the interviewer. In my case, the interviewer was satisfied with my approach, so he didn't really make it very dynamic, but he did keep asking me questions. Like, he didn't want to reinvent the wheel by asking me to go for solving the country B again and again, or country C again. So he just said that just tell me your approach overall for the country B or for the country C. And I told him that this would be my approach, and then so if I get this result, I'll probably do this, or if I get this result mathematically, I'll probably do this. Once the case study was done, again, the question that every interviewer will probably ask you is if you have any questions. So again, like I said, that one very good thing to do when this question is asked is asking about your own performance in the case study round. So I did that, and the interviewer told me that I was pretty satisfied with your approach. It was pretty good. It could have been done with multiple other ways also, but that's fine. It doesn't really matter. And then I also asked him about my feedback, and then again, like I said, he told me that your approach was good, and I actually ended up like putting up a positive impression on the interview by asking this question. So what does a consulting firm look for? So I am personally from manufacturing and mathematics background. So any consulting firm is practically looking for someone who has a business aptitude as well as a technical aptitude also. So being from manufacturing background, being from an engineering background, I had a certain bit of technical aptitude, but I had to really develop my business side of aptitude. So for example, if you've seen that in the interview, in the case studies and guesstimates, it's more about profit and costs and demand and supply. So there were two major courses that I took on campus. One was Principles of Economics, which really made me familiar with the concepts of supply and demand, and also with how you can calculate revenue and how you can calculate profit based on these particular categories. And the second course that I did on campus was supply chain management. Supply chain. Most of us are really familiar about the demand side of view because it's really easy to see, because we are really most of the times we are on the receiving end. But what really goes on from the supply side? So for example, there are different categories of costs that are involved in supply also. One thing that people really miss out is on distribution channels, which is very important actually. So most case studies won't take you that deep into a particular business, but it helps to know these particular pointers also. For example, in supply chain, in the course that I took, supply chain management, we really went through the different types of distribution channels that actually businesses use at this right now, and what are operational costs that go into setting up a business. And then we did certain case studies as a part of the course. So I would say that I had a good experience about finding out how a business operates, and that really helped me in solving this case study that I faced in the Bain interview. And also the case study workshop that the Bain panelists took night before the interview, that actually also helped me a lot, because they actually take you the entire case study and they'll keep asking you questions, and they ensure that the case study was complex enough to take us through all the concepts that are actually involved in any business case study. So for example, like I said, distribution channel is actually a very complicated concept, and it doesn't really come up much in case studies, but the case study that we were taught in the workshop actually was based on the distribution channel. So like there were so the gist of it is that there was depreciation profits because a particular distribution channel wasn't really working well. So the company had to shift from that to a different distribution channel. Now that comes down when you break the supply side of a business into different categories. You go into operational cost and then you go into distribution channel. It's really deeper down the line. So these sort of things, I think it will really help if you go through some business courses on your campus. One other thing that I did to prepare for consulting interviews was that I went through a lot of workshops. For example, there were different kinds of companies coming up on campus and they hosted different workshops. There was PwC which came on our campus, and it was really PwC that told me about this Macy approach, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive, which was actually a very helpful approach. And then they also took us through an entire case study and they taught us how to solve it. And then there was another company, Indus Insights, which had a workshop before our interview process, and they also took us through an entire case study and an entire guesstimate. And consulting is all about diversifying your portfolio. Like I said, they see different spikes. So for the reason why they are seeing different spikes is to figure out whether a person can really work into different fields. What they really want to see is if you have the right problem solving approach, and if you have experienced different fields and have excelled in them, then it's probable that you have like a logical mindset to approach things. So like I said, that they'll see if you have done enough internships. So internships really help you solve different kinds of problems and work in different environments. And they'll also see if you've taken any initiative. So for example, I did my internship in Uber, and that really helped me prepare for again this case that again developed my problem solving approach. And they also then I had personally also taken an initiative to establish a club on my campus again. So when you're taking a new initiative, so it doesn't really matter what the initiative is. The gist is that when you're taking an initiative, there are a lot of things that go into it. You have to decide like what the objective is going to be, and how are you going to initiate that, and how are you going to make up a team that comes and collectively works together to solve that problem.
Thank you for watching. For more such informative videos, do subscribe to Placement Grid. Cheers.